This is Democracy Watch. Marc, we've spoken about the dangers posed by someone like Kash Patel as FBI director, but now I wanted to discuss whether he'll be able to serve as FBI director by skipping the Senate confirmation process. So is there a way that Donald Trump could fire Christopher Wray, who's the current FBI director, and then appoint Kash Patel as interim FBI director without needing to get Senate approval?
Yeah, it's interesting. Kash Patel has only been nominated for a day or so now, and already Republicans are figuring out ways to skirt and break the law to get him into office. Right? As if it wasn't bad enough that they chose this guy and expressed all the confidence in the world that he would get confirmed. Now, all of a sudden, they are trying to figure out ways around the federal law. Well, here's the deal: the Federal Vacancy Act, which is what they'd have to rely on here, basically says that when there is a vacancy at the head of an agency, it can be filled with a few different kinds of people, none of which Kash Patel meets the criteria for, right? The one in which you see the right wing starting to float on social media. By the way, everyone go to Blue Sky. This guy over here, by the way, big deal on Blue Sky. I mean, Brian Tyler Cohen is one of the biggest accounts on Blue Sky. Anyway, so Republicans are already floating this idea on social media that what they're going to do is they install Kash Patel as Wray's number two. They essentially create a new number two slot. Donald Trump does. He puts Kash Patel in that slot. Then he fires Christopher Wray, right? Who, by the way, can only be fired for cause, but nevertheless, he fires him. And then Kash Patel is then eligible to move up under the Federal Vacancy Act because he is the number two person of the agency. Guess what? They tried this before with Ken Cuccinelli in the first Trump administration, where they did the same cockamamie thing for the immigration department, for the U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services, and it got struck down by a federal judge. So, they've tried this gambit before. It got struck down by a very good, smart federal judge in Washington, D.C., Randy Moss. I expect if they tried this again, there would again be legal challenges. I mean, they can't just create this cockamamie scheme as a way around what the federal law is intended, which is to say that when you have a vacancy in the normal, ordinary course at a federal agency, that the person who is the number two steps into the temporary role for a temporary period until someone new can be confirmed. Of course, what Donald Trump would be trying to do here, as he tried to do with Ken Cuccinelli, is to manufacture a new number two, manufacture a vacancy, and then have that person ascend.
In theory, if this is subject to a court challenge in the same way that Ken Cuccinelli's was, and that's in the federal court system, could it theoretically be appealed all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court?
As you know, anything can be appealed up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
So, right? I mean,
So
is there a world in which we're kind of putting our eggs in the basket of hoping that Amy Coney Barrett and Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas are all going to do the right thing here?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, we need two of the six conservative justices to do the right thing because you'd have three liberals. But I get your skepticism. But here's my message. We are not going to survive the next 4 years with a democracy intact if we do not have the courts step up and do the right thing. I mean, we talked before about whether there is a chance that Senate Republicans will do the right thing. And as you recall, I said that the chances of Senate Republicans doing the right thing were vanishingly small, right? There is no backbone in the Senate Republican conference. So what we are left with is the courts. It's the reason why Democracy Docket covers the courts. It is the reason why I write on Democracy Docket about the courts. It's the reason why I bring litigation to protect democracy in court, because as imperfect as it is, and believe me, I understand all the challenges and the imperfections, it is in fact the best tool we have available.
And by the way, I would just mention for anybody watching right now to make sure that you stay on top of whatever's happening in the courts, as well as just our democracy more broadly. Please sign up for Democracy Docket if you're not yet signed up, especially as more and more people continue to sprint away from legacy media because they're not meeting this moment with the urgency that it deserves. An amazing resource that you should be using on a daily basis is Democracy Docket. So I'll put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Marc, is there some other untoward way that Republicans might be scheming where they could have some success at getting Kash Patel in? I know that with regard to what we spoke about in the first question, there doesn't seem like a way to do it on its face, but that's also assuming that Republicans are going to respect the rules that would prevent them from appointing him there. So is there a way that they'll kind of be able to subvert the rules and rely on the fact that in this federal government of Trump loyalists, otherwise, there's not going to be anybody to stop them from doing what they want to do?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, Bill Kristol commented on Blue Sky that, he hopes that the liberal lawyers are not assuming that, everything will be on the up and up and that the Republicans are not prepared to litigate under the Vacancy Act.
Right.
And I assure you, we are prepared, right? So that is plan A that they seem to have. Plan B, which was the old plan A, how's that for mapping there for you? Remember, was Donald Trump saying recess appointments.
Right.
Remember, he talked about this idea of forcing the Republicans in the House and the Senate to manufacture a recess to allow him to do recess appointments. Now, that landed pretty poorly in the Senate, including among Republicans. But again, you never get poor betting against Republicans in Congress having a backbone. Right. So when push came to shove, would they go down that road? Who knows? Maybe they would. They would sacrifice everything they have denied Donald Trump in his first term. Joe Biden, Democrats denied Joe Biden this. Barack Obama, Democrats denied, right? All of a sudden, the Republicans could roll over and say, okay, we'll just go into recess and let you appoint whoever you want.
Let's move this thought experiment forward and say that Donald Trump is successful in one way or another in getting Kash Patel into the FBI, whether it's in some, using some scheme that they figured out, interim FBI director, whatever it is. What could he accomplish? Let's say he has roughly 200 days as interim director. What would he be able to accomplish in the event that he's able to become the interim FBI director?
I mean, he'd be able to wreak havoc. I mean, he'd be able to, if he was the interim director or the acting director, he is in fact in charge of the FBI. So in 200 days, he could do just about anything. I mean, he could open criminal investigations into Donald Trump's political enemies. He could corrupt the intelligence gathering process. He could selectively leak information, or not leak, really, as the FBI director, release information on a selective basis to damage Donald Trump's enemies and to falsely promote his supporters. I mean, there's any number of things he can do in 200 days. I mean, 200 days is a long time to put in charge of the nation's premier law enforcement agency and to hope that it survives. Now, it's not 4 years, but it is not something that people should be looking at as a compromise. And one of the things I worry about, and I know you do, particularly with the legacy media, there is this effort to sort of split the difference. So you could imagine this being on the one hand, well, it's not 4 years and it's 200 days, and we'll just give Kash Patel a role and see how he does, right? Let's keep an open mind. You could imagine the editorial pages of certain newspapers saying, and we can't fall into that. I mean, Donald Trump said he wanted to be a dictator for a day, and the legacy media laughed it off. Well, look who's laughing now.
Right. Well, as kind of pushback to this idea that he would be able to go in and wreak havoc, you and I have spoken about the dangers of Project 2025, about Donald Trump's plan to replace career civil servants with loyalists. That's Schedule F. So if Patel has 200 days to make his mark, but those career civil servants are still in place because Schedule F hasn't been enacted yet, won't he have the obstacle of all the people who actually staff the FBI who believe in its mission to contend with?
We hope so, right? I mean, one of my messages to the rank and file who work in federal agencies is don't resign. Okay, don't resign. Don't. Resigning is the equivalent of anticipatory obedience that we are so critical of the media and others, corporate leaders, from engaging in. I understand how unpleasant it would be to serve in a Trump administration, but we need good, honest people in a Trump administration. And one of the ways that I fear that Kash Patel could get his way is if the good people leave and the only people left are the ones who are trying to curry favor with Kash Patel and Donald Trump. So that's number one. Number two, you assume that he has not enacted Schedule F on day one, right? I mean, that's an executive order that I think is probably prepared and ready to roll on day one. I don't think Donald Trump has gone to all this trouble, to nominate these crackpots and lunatics to then be thwarted by the federal civil service because of civil service protections. I assume we're going to see that as part of this.
Right, and
that'll be challenged in court, by the way.
Right. And that's kind of lending itself to what I had asked before, which is like Trump's inability to enact Schedule F relies on this probably mistaken assumption that the rest of the federal government under Trump is going to respect all of the, all of the preventative measures that Biden's put in place. And I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to say, oh, if only we could enact Schedule F, but Biden has a regulation that he put. I think that if nobody respects the regulations, then the regulation doesn't carry any weight anymore. And that's the kind of the danger of somebody like Donald Trump being in office who isn't going to abide by things that he doesn't want to abide by and has no bulwark by virtue of folks there who are gonna block his worst impulses.
Yeah, I think that the word that we need to ban, we just came up with the word of the year, right? They released word of the year at the end of the year. We need to have a word ban. And the word I propose we ban is norms. If I hear another Democrat or progressive talk about the norms, how the norms are going to save us, how we have to respect the norms, okay? There are no norms in Donald Trump's world.
Yeah.
Like norms are for suckers, to paraphrase Donald Trump from his standpoint. And so we cannot assume that things won't happen because Donald Trump will respect the dignity of the Oval Office or respect the norms of the institutions. So no, I don't assume any of that will be in place. And those of us who are fighting for democracy need to use every tool available and not be constrained by norms and perceptions and dinner party invitations, whatever it is, right? It is, and again, this is where I think the legacy media goes wrong because they love norms. Right. They love norms like that. There was a thing about, maybe the Trump White House will invite, podcasters into the Brady room, into the press briefings. And, the legacy media that is used to their seats protected and things will go, oh, my God, what would happen if they were sitting next to a podcaster? You know what? Like the norms are not serving us here.
Right. Right. And their inability to recognize it is probably the most pathetic part of all of this, because that if that's all that we're clinging on to assume that our democracy is going to be safe, then that shows how woefully unprepared we are for what's about to come. So again, to that exact point, you have been the exception to that rule in terms of the media beating the drum about what to expect, about the dangers that are actually presented to us. So again, for those who are watching right now, to support the work that Marc does and to get a news outlet that understands the moment that we're in right now, please sign up for Democracy Docket. Again, I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.